I'd like to welcome Tzameret Fuerst, the co-founder and CEO of Circumcision. She's a businesswoman with a fascinating social cause. Welcome. So
Thank you.
Tell me about the mission of your company.
Well, if you don't mind, I was backstage, and I just had an idea of how I want to do this a little differently, if you don't mind.
What does differently mean?
Just give you a moment. I want to do a little experiment with the audience. It'll be very quick.
Lauren, when you find out what you... Oh, the audience, they're on your side. When you find out what she does for a living, you're going to know that this was the right move.
Thank
do what you
very
want.
much. Boker tov lekulam. Good morning to everyone. I want to start with a very brief story. I'm going to take you back a year. I was with my two sons. They were about 8 and 5 at the time, and they wanted to learn more about my work in Africa. So I took them to Botswana, and we did a little counting exercise. Now, since I can't take all 13,000 of you with me to Botswana, I'm going to ask just for a moment if everyone in this room can close your eyes. And now imagine that we're together in a rural village in Botswana. It's a very crowded, hectic morning. We're on a paved road. You see many men riding their bikes in Western clothing, many women, some of them wearing beautiful traditional garments of bright orange, yellow, and red, some of them with babies wrapped around their back with a piece of cloth. And here's where the counting exercise comes in. We're going to count 1, 2, 3, and every fourth person you will see will have HIV. That's 1, 2, 3 HIV. Every fourth set of eyes you will look into will likely die of AIDS for lack of access to treatment. Now keep your eyes closed, because if you can imagine that your tax dollars, coupled with a few Israeli brains, have put something in the palm of my hand that is going to save millions of lives. Brian,
okay, that was pretty intense.
Back to you.
Help me understand the challenge that your company's addressing.
Well, basically, AIDS is at crisis levels. In the United States, we take it for granted because we have access to treatment. But in the rest of the world, it's a death sentence. And the vaccine is maybe a decade away, but we have at our disposal an intervention that is a one-time intervention that has a vaccine-type effect. It's a one-time procedure offering a lifetime protection, and that's male circumcision.
So why does male circumcision help with HIV prevention?
Well, basically, the World Health Organization and the UNAIDS conducted significant scientific studies proving that circumcised men in sub-Saharan Africa reduce the risk of HIV infection by about 70%. Now, that's a great statistic, but the challenge is getting it done, because Africa lacks the physicians, the infrastructure, the resources, and quite frankly, men are babies, and they don't like needles and blood, and the only approved technique is surgical.
Very true. Okay, so since this is the AIPAC Policy Conference, just give me a 30,000-foot, 40,000-foot view of what that does.
Audience participation here?
This is one we're not going to demonstrate. I gave it the office.
So basically what I'm holding in my hand here is the first device in the world that can conduct non-surgical adult male circumcision. And what that means is that we can do the procedure with no injected anesthesia, so there's no needles, no blood, no sterile settings, no sutures, no doctors, no hospitals. All we need is a minimally trained healthcare professional with 3 days of training that can do this procedure in jeans and a t-shirt with no electricity, no special settings. In 2 minutes it's placed, in 2 minutes it's removed, and we've done over 6,000 safe procedures in Rwanda, Zimbabwe, and Uganda, and by the way, it's FDA cleared.
All right, that'll cover that.
Thank you.
I know a lot of resources have gone into AIDS in Africa.
That's true. Since 2003, the US government has poured actually over $48 billion into a program called PEPFAR, which is part of the foreign aid bill that I know you lobby for. And in fact, Bush is the one who started it, and President Obama has expanded the admission. And at this point, as we speak, PEPFAR and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation are funding pilots all across our region in sub-Saharan Africa using the PREPEX device.
So, and the goal is?
Well, the goal is really, actually the Obama administration came out with a very bold statement a few months ago, announcing for the first time in 30 years that we can achieve an AIDS-free generation. And part of the 3 strategies to reach an AIDS-free generation is scaling up of adult male circumcision in Africa. So the goal is to reach 20 million men by the year 2015. Now get this, if we reach 20 million men by 2015, we're going to save nearly 3.5 million lives and $16.5 billion in long-term healthcare costs. And mind you that the US taxpayer is paying the largest portion of this bill as by far the largest donors to the AIDS battle globally.
But what you're also doing is instead of sending doctors and nurses in, you're empowering Africans to take charge of their own healthcare and situation with this.
That's a great point, because the solution to date, because Africa lacks the resources, is by sending Western surgeons. But that's very costly, it doesn't solve the infrastructure problem, and frankly, it's still not attractive to men to go through a surgical procedure.
So this is all absolutely amazing. As we wrap up here, I have a final question. There are a lot of things Israel lacks, but circumcision is not one of them. So how is it that Israel came to come up with this idea to help solve AIDS in Africa with circumcision?
Well, you know, I think part of the Israeli psyche is, because we're so tiny and intense, is to look beyond our borders and look towards the larger world. We're very entrepreneurial, very resourceful, very inventive, and I think we just see a problem and feel this tickling urge that we have to solve it. And if you check, in any global crisis, Israel will be the first to send troops, whether it's Africa, Asia, the United States. We're there for our friends. And that's what being Israeli is about. Now, while our company is global, if I may, it gives me tremendous pride to represent the values of the country that I love and to spread the word about a medical intervention that will take AIDS off a cliff in the hardest hit areas of the world. Thank you.
Folks, a real force of nature, Tzameret Fuerst.